The next afternoon, Chris brought Buddy over. The last time Leo had seen them was at the tail end of spring, and now the world had tipped into the sweltering heat of mid-July. Chris, dressed in a loose white t-shirt that made him look even more like a younger version of his uncle, crouched in the shade of Julian's porch. He was teasing the dog with one hand while complaining to Leo about how tyrannical Julian had become. He lamented that a few more days of being cooped up and he'd go stir-crazy. His voice rose and Buddy, misinterpreting the tone as aggression toward Leo, started barking fiercely at him. Chris insisted he wasn't yelling at Leo, growing even more frustrated with the dog, calling him a little traitor for siding with an outsider. Leo, feeling a bit awkward, offered a weak defense, suggesting that Mr. Blackwood, Julian, had probably just forgotten and didn't mean to ground him for so long. Chris scoffed, certain it was deliberate. He suspected his uncle was afraid he'd ruin his plans. His gaze then shifted to the plain band on Leo's left ring finger. Chris asked, his voice suddenly stripped of its earlier bravado, if he was really sure about this. Leo's eyes fell and he nodded. This wasn't some grand, cinematic romance built on epic vows, but a practical arrangement. There wasn't much to be sure about. Chris's expression grew more complicated. After a moment, he let out a sigh and asked with forced casualness if this meant he had to start calling him Uncle Leo. The suggestion startled Leo, a faint blush creeping up his neck. He stammered that it wasn't necessary. Chris confessed he never thought his uncle would actually go through with it. He'd assumed it was all a joke. Leo wondered if Julian had mentioned it before. Chris confirmed that he had once before that whole incident with Kevin. Before that incident. So, Julian's decision to marry him wasn't entirely a reactive move to spite his mother for her meddling. Leo found himself unable to guess Julian's true motivations. He decided it didn't matter. The heat was oppressive. Chris stood up, pulling at the collar of his shirt. He proposed they get some ice cream from the shop down the road. Leo hesitated, mentioning that Julian didn't want him eating cold things, though the thought was incredibly tempting. Chris was indignant, questioning what Julian didn't try to control. He reasoned that if they kept it a secret, Julian would never know. He grabbed Leo's wrist, urging him to come along and promising it would be fine. Leo offered a token resistance before allowing himself to be pulled along, reasoning that it was Chris's idea. If Julian found out, the blame would fall on him. The logic was flimsy, but it was enough. They walked to the corner creamery, the one with the cheerful striped awning. Chris went inside to buy the cones while Leo waited outside with Buddy. Juggling 3 cones proved to be a challenge. Chris emerged, using his shoulder to push the glass door open, his hands precariously cradling the teetering treats. Leo rushed forward to help, taking one and noticing there were 3. Chris explained that of course Buddy got one too. Looking down, Leo saw the dog, tail wagging furiously, tongue lolling out, eyes fixed on the ice cream. Leo felt a pang of guilt for forgetting. He crouched down and offered his cone to the dog, telling him to have the first bites. As Leo fed Buddy, Chris handed his second cone to Leo. The heat was melting the ice cream quickly. Leo, focused on the dog, didn't notice the vanilla cream dripping onto the back of his hand until it was too late. He reacted instinctively, lowering his head to lick it off. Chris, witnessing the moment, looked away with a sudden awkwardness, muttering that he was an idiot. Leo was about to reply when a familiar black SUV slowed at the intersection. Julian didn't often use this particular vehicle, so it wasn't until it was right in front of them that Leo recognized it as one of the household cars. But it was too late. The person inside had already seen him. The SUV pulled to the curb, and the rear window slid down, revealing Julian's face. Leo instinctively hid the cone behind his back. He called out to Julian, his voice small. A smear of cream lingered at the corner of his mouth, and in his other hand was the half-eaten cone, mangled by Buddy. He stared, frozen, at the man in the car. Getting caught sneaking ice cream was mortifying. Beside him, Chris tried to make himself inconspicuous, coughing into his hand and looking at the ground. Julian's voice was laced with tired amusement. He told him not to hide it. He'd already seen everything. Leo brought his hands forward. Melted cream was now running down his wrist. Julian opened the car door and stepped out. He took a handkerchief from the driver and walked over to Leo. Bending down, he gently wiped Leo's hand clean. Leo mumbled a defense, claiming he'd only had a little bit. Julian acknowledged this, adding dryly that it had all melted away. Watching the scene, Chris finally believed it. His uncle was really going to marry Leo. In his 17 years, Chris had never seen Julian treat him with such patience. He remembered being a toddler and Julian expressing disgust at him for eating with his hands. He'd only been 1 year old. After cleaning Leo's hand, Julian finally turned his attention to his nephew, his previous gentleness gone. He asked if this was his idea, his voice low and sharp. He reminded Chris that Leo's stomach had only just recovered and the doctor had forbidden anything cold. Chris, who hadn't known about the stomach issue, apologized immediately. Leo, worried Chris would blame himself, quickly explained it was just a minor inflammation and he was fine now. But Julian was firm, stating they couldn't be careless before the wedding. Chris picked up on an unusual note in his uncle's tone and asked daringly if he was nervous. The word nervous seemed entirely alien when applied to Julian. Chris had never seen him exhibit such an emotion. Julian replied that a little prudence was never a bad thing. It was then that Leo understood why Julian had been so insistent about his diet and rest, telling him not to venture too far from home. A strange feeling bloomed in his chest, the first real, tangible sense that he was about to get married. He promised he understood and that it wouldn't happen again. Julian's expression softened. He told him that was good. Leo then asked why he was home so early. Julian explained he'd finished his work. There were still some wedding details to finalize, things he needed to discuss with him. Leo felt a flicker of panic, admitting he didn't know anything about planning a wedding. Julian smiled reassuringly, patting his head. He told him not to worry. He would guide him through it. Their private moment was interrupted by an impatient Chris, who complained about them talking in the heat and suggested they go back inside. Leo's face warmed, and he tugged on Julian's sleeve, agreeing they should go home. Since it was still early, Chris stayed, sitting nearby as Leo and Julian looked over floral arrangements for the wedding. Somehow, the search for flowers devolved into looking at pictures of puppies and kittens. Leo had long dreamed of having a pet of his own, and Julian had been considering it. He'd asked a friend to keep an eye out, and that friend had recently sent over photos and videos. Julian had saved them on his laptop, which Leo had now discovered. Since the pet was for Leo, Julian's only requirements were that it be gentle and intelligent, and not a risk to anyone. Among the photos was a blue Merle Australian Shepherd with striking blue eyes. It was both beautiful and elegant. Leo looked from the puppy on the screen to Buddy. He decided against a puppy, saying that Buddy was enough. Julian told him Buddy was Buddy, and he could get another dog if he wanted one. Leo shook his head. He explained that if he got another one, he would love them both, but he might slowly come to love the new one more. That would make Buddy sad. His expression was serious, his gaze fixed on Julian, completely unaware of how endearing he looked. After a moment, Julian looked away. He conceded that they wouldn't get a puppy then. In the end, Leo fell for a white Devon Rex cat, which also had beautiful blue eyes. Buddy seemed to prefer the cat to another dog as well, grinning at the screen. Chris interjected with a teasing tone, asking if they were going to get a bigger house to go with the new cat. He quipped, surely there was a marital home. Julian replied calmly that Leo liked living here. Just then, his phone rang. He answered it, his brow furrowing at whatever was said on the other end. He sounded annoyed, questioning if it had to be now. The person on the other end must have said something even more irritating, because Julian took a deep breath and told them to just come in. 3 minutes after he hung up, the doorbell rang. It was the glib man from the bar, Vance. Leo remembered his name and that his family were old friends of the Blackwoods. Vance had apparently already been at the gate when he called, sent by his parents to check on Julian and, ostensibly, to apologize for his rude behavior the other night. That was Vance's story, at least, but his smug grin didn't look very apologetic. He declared that he'd been blind not to recognize his future sister-in-law, adding that he never thought he'd live to see the day Julian Blackwood got married. Vance made himself at home, dropping onto the sofa. He presented a basket of vegetables his parents had grown. He explained that his retired parents had taken up gardening and insisted he bring the organic produce, claiming it was good for you. After his long-winded explanation, Julian gave him a cool look. He asked if showing up at dinner time with vegetables was also his parents' idea. Vance laughed, admitting that was his own idea. He was hoping to snag a free meal. Julian flatly told him there was no dinner. He acknowledged the gift and asked Vance to thank his parents, then explained that with the wedding preparations, they were busy and couldn't host him. Vance protested, draping an arm over Julian's shoulder. He argued that no matter how busy, everyone had to eat. He hadn't even had a chance to taste his sister-in-law's cooking yet. The truth was, Julian hadn't either. Throughout their exchange, Leo sat quietly beside Julian, Buddy resting at his feet as he rhythmically stroked the dog's head. Hearing his name, Leo looked up, confused. Vance leaned in close, his charming eyes crinkling as he smiled. He apologized for his behavior the other day, asking if the magnanimous sister-in-law could find it in his heart to forgive him. Before Leo could respond, Julian pulled Vance away, stating firmly that Leo didn't cook. Leo started to speak, but a look from Julian silenced him. Vance considered this. He whined that since he'd come all this way, Julian couldn't possibly send him home hungry. It would look bad. Julian's brow furrowed. He asked what he wanted to eat, mentioning the housekeeper was there. That was acceptable to Vance. It was clear to Leo that Julian didn't particularly like this friend and was only tolerating him because of their family's connection. Otherwise, he would have been thrown out long ago. Leo couldn't understand why Vance was so insistent on staying. He secretly thought the man must be oblivious not to see he wasn't welcome. A sideways glance at Chris revealed the teenager rolling his eyes in silent agreement. It was the first time they'd had a dinner guest since Leo and Julian had been together. Proved that sheer audacity was a powerful tool. Even someone as aloof as Julian couldn't fend off Vance's shamelessness. At the dinner table, Julian and Leo sat on one side, Chris and Vance on the other. After some small talk about the wedding, Vance turned the conversation, smiling at Leo. He'd heard, he said, that this was his second time around. The words were spoken with a smile, but the atmosphere at the table instantly chilled. Leo looked up, slowly putting down his fork. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. While he and Mr. Adler had never officially married, Adler had referred to him as his spouse to others. In that sense, what Vance said wasn't entirely wrong. Vance took Leo's silence as a confirmation. He remarked that it must be true. He lamented that if he had known, he would have returned from abroad sooner. An opportunity like this wouldn't have fallen to Julian. He then had the audacity to look at Julian and ask if he didn't agree. Julian's voice was dangerously low, holding onto a final thread of civility. He told Vance this was not the place for his nonsense. Vance tilted his head, shrugging dismissively. Chris, who had been eating quietly, suddenly spoke up. Picking at the food on his plate, he said nonchalantly that even people who weren't picky eaters wouldn't eat just any dish served to them. The comment was casual, but the meaning was sharp and clear. Leo looked nervously at Julian, hoping he would intervene, but Julian remained impassive. Vance just laughed good-naturedly. He addressed Chris, saying it had been a few years and the kid's tongue had gotten sharper. Chris retorted that he was just telling the truth. Vance challenged him, asking how he knew he couldn't be that dish. Chris turned, sneered slightly, and said nothing more. Finally, Julian spoke slowly. He told Chris not to be rude. Chris looked away. He picked up a piece of fish and placed it on Leo's plate. He told his aunt to eat up, that it was the fish he liked. Hearing Chris call him that so calmly for the first time, Leo nearly choked. A violent coughing fit seized him. Tears sprang to his eyes as he turned away, covering his mouth. Julian immediately pulled him into his arms, patting his back and handing him a napkin, asking if he was all right. Leo shook his head, wiping his eyes. He leaned against Julian's shoulder and whispered that he was fine. Julian shot a glare at Chris before stroking the back of Leo's head. He asked if he wanted to go upstairs and rest. Leo nodded. After murmuring a quiet apology to the others at the table, he led Buddy upstairs. With Leo gone, Julian finally turned on Chris, his voice cold. He admonished him for the name-calling, reminding him that Leo was sensitive. Chris pouted, looking rebellious but staying silent. Vance watched the scene, propping his chin on his hand with great interest. He remarked that Julian seemed to have changed a lot. Julian looked at him. How so? You've learned how to care for someone. Julian changed the subject. He asked Vance how many years it had been since they'd last seen each other. Vance thought for a moment, guessing it had been 3 or 4 years. Julian stated that people change in that amount of time. He added that when Vance reached 35, he'd be different too. Vance disagreed, claiming he would forever love beautiful, sweet things. Julian's gaze sharpened. Even if they belonged to someone else? Vance paused, then burst out laughing. He asked if Julian wanted the truth. Julian leaned back, crossing his arms and watching him expectantly. Once his laughter subsided, Vance cleared his throat. He answered, half joking and half serious, that what belongs to others is always more interesting. Their eyes met for a long moment. Julian's gaze darkened, and a faint smile touched his lips. He agreed that Vance hadn't changed at all. Vance asked if that was a compliment or an insult. Julian clarified that he was complimenting him on being a scoundrel. He then turned to Chris and told him to go check on Leo. Chris, ever perceptive, dropped his utensils and got up, saying he understood. Now it was just Julian and Vance in the dining room. Vance still wore that easy smile, looking at Julian without a hint of unease. He suggested that Julian was no different from him. He pointed out that Julian had taken Leo in before Adler's body was even cold, and that it was hard to believe it wasn't cremated. This time, Julian didn't refute it. There was no cremation. The funeral was only the second time he had ever met Leo. Logically, Julian should have denied it, but as the words formed, an uncharacteristic hesitation stopped him. He could still vividly recall his first meeting with Leo. Every expression, Every subtle movement, every word Leo had spoken was etched into his mind like a brand. He hadn't tried to remember, but he couldn't forget. He tried to recall his first encounters with others in his life. He couldn't even picture the faces of people he'd once spent every day with. They had all blurred with time. Because of Vance's words, he began to notice things he never had before. Vance's victorious smile widened. He declared that proved his point. Neither of them was better than the other. It was just fair competition. The beautiful young widower could be with him, or he could be with someone else. Julian snapped back to the present, his brow furrowed. You've met him once, and you're already talking about fair competition? Vance shrugged. Infatuation happens in an instant. Why else would they call it love at first sight? Julian was still preoccupied with his earlier thoughts and had no patience for word games. His reply was cold. You're welcome to try. Vance stood up, adding that he wouldn't dream of ruining the wedding. He thanked Julian and his sister-in-law for their hospitality. He took half a step, then paused. He mentioned that the kid, Chris, was quite interesting. Julian's frown deepened. Get out. After Vance left, Julian sat alone in the dining room, his thoughts consumed by Leo. Could Vance be right? Had he been plotting this all along without even realizing it? Julian had always believed he possessed certain basic principles, like not interfering in others' relationships. But now he contemplated another possibility. If Mr. Adler hadn't died, and if he'd had the opportunity to get close to Leo, would he have adhered to his so-called principles? He wasn't so sure. Upstairs, 2 boys and a dog were watching Tom and Jerry. Julian composed himself and went up, lightly smacking the back of Chris's head. Aren't you a little old for this? Hearing his voice, Leo looked up, his eyes bright. Julian. He had played with Buddy for a bit and watched some cartoons, and his mood had completely recovered. Julian always professed to dislike the goofy Samoyed, but he had to admit the dog was excellent at cheering Leo up. Without him, Leo's life would be much less joyful. Chris asked if Vance had left. Julian gave a non-committal grunt and then chided his nephew for his temper, saying it was getting worse. Chris retorted that he'd learned it from him, like father, like son. Julian countered that he'd never taught him to call people dishes. Chris sniffed indignantly, muttering that he was just trying to help, with the guy practically trying to steal Leo right from under his nose. The object of the stealing was obvious. Leo's face flushed, and he looked pleadingly at Julian. Julian issued an eviction notice to his nephew. It's getting late. You should go home. Chris got up reluctantly. All right, I'm leaving. See you tomorrow. The cozy evening had been disrupted by an uninvited guest. Once the house fell silent, a strange quiet descended between Leo and Julian. The atmosphere was suddenly awkward. Finally, Julian broke the silence, asking if he was going to take a shower. Leo nodded. Julian seemed preoccupied with something. Leo felt he was distracted and guessed that Vance must have said something to him after he and Chris went upstairs. Later that night, lying in bed, Leo quietly slipped into Julian's arms, wrapping his own around his waist. Julian looked down, stroking Leo's hair. What is it? Leo was silent for a moment, then whispered, I was never married to Mr. Adler. Julian's hand stilled. I know. He told him not to take those words to heart. Whether he had been married before didn't matter. If that didn't matter, then what was on Julian's mind? Leo couldn't guess. After holding each other quietly for a while, Leo added, and I won't leave with anyone else. A hint of another expression finally crossed Julian's face. A corner of his mouth lifted in a teasing smirk. He asked if it was because of the money. Leo shook his head, whispering that it wasn't. or at least not entirely. The fact that Julian was giving him half of the marital assets had been a profound shock. Almost no one else, including Mr. Adler, would have done that. So, even if it were just for the money, Leo wouldn't leave Julian easily. As for other reasons, regardless of anything else, Julian was the first person to put a wedding ring on his finger. As if reading his mind, Julian gave a resigned laugh. He murmured that if it was for the money, then so be it, calling him a little gold digger. Leo looked up, carefully venturing that he didn't need that much money. He just wanted Julian to spend more time with him. He quickly clarified that he didn't mean for Julian to neglect his work, but just when he wasn't busy, could he be around more? If so, he wouldn't even need the kitten. His eyes were bright, and when he looked at someone with that timid expression, it was impossible not to soften. No wonder he wanted a pet so badly, Julian thought. He was afraid of being lonely. Julian's voice softened unconsciously. He promised to spend more time with him, and to get him the kitten too. He told him he could have whatever he wanted. When planning the wedding, Julian had prepared two scenarios. If his mother cooperated, he and Leo would have a traditional ceremony at the family estate. If she refused, they would go to a chapel for a Western-style wedding. Time was tight, but money solved most problems. A team of over 200 people worked around the clock for a month to meet all of Julian's demands. Under pressure, Julian's mother finally relented. At least this way, she could maintain the appearance of a caring mother, rather than letting the world know she had no control over her son, which would be a greater humiliation. The day of the wedding arrived. A marriage between two men didn't involve as many traditions as a typical wedding, but to add a sense of gravity, Julian had spent the previous night at his family home. Early on the wedding day, he led a grand procession of cars from the estate to pick up Leo. The spectacle was so ostentatious, with lavish decorations lining the route, that it seemed the entire city of Seattle knew the Blackwood heir was marrying a man. When the principles involved are unapologetic, there's little room for gossip. Julian grandly escorted Leo from his home, forgoing any silly groom-hazing rituals. They walked hand in hand, smiling at their friends and family. Leo had never been married and had half expected to play the role of a bride from the movies. The day before, he had even asked Julian if he needed to wear a veil, which had earned him a laugh from Julian, who called him old-fashioned for someone so young. Leo had blushed, mumbling that it was what he saw in the movies. Julian, who loved to tease him, had taken hold of his slender, pale foot, gently kneading it. He had mused that such beautiful feet would probably look good in anything. Leo, ticklish, had struggled slightly, telling him to stop. They'd wrestled playfully on the sofa for a while. If not for the day's serious agenda, Julian might have been tempted to take things further. And now, here was Leo, dressed in a suit that complemented Julian's, standing quietly by his side. A gentle, serene smile was on his face as he placed his hand in Julian's. The air was filled with joyous noise, and shimmering gold confetti drifted down from above. For a fleeting moment, time seemed to stand still. Light and sound slowed to a crawl, flowing past Leo like a gentle river. He closed his eyes, and in the dancing spots of sunlight, he saw a familiar face. It was Mr. Adler, smiling at him from a place that was both impossibly distant and intimately close. He heard his voice. "Happy wedding day, my dear." Unexpectedly, tears welled in Leo's eyes. When he opened them again, Mr. Adler was gone. The festive noise returned. Leo tightened his grip on Julian's hand. His lashes lowered. He had no family or friends of his own here. The only family on his side at this wedding was perhaps Mr. Adler watching over him from above. Would he truly wish him happiness? The limousine headed towards the other side of the city. Leo turned his head and saw the white ribbons tied to the door handle, fluttering in the wind. The scale of today's event was far beyond his expectations. He had thought it would be a simple affair staged for Julian's mother, but Julian had orchestrated a spectacle that seemed designed to announce it to the world. This left Leo feeling both confused and a little frightened. It wasn't until they arrived at the Blackwood estate that he realized the morning's procession was just a prelude. The entire mansion was decked out in festive splendor, with gold and cream decorations, fresh flowers, and balloons everywhere. Fireworks lit up the daytime sky, and a throng of guests lined the driveway to welcome them. It was a wedding of the utmost grandeur. Leo had never even witnessed such an event, let alone been the center of one. He was understandably nervous. As he stepped out of the car, he nearly stumbled. Julian smoothly wrapped an arm around his waist, whispering for him to be careful. With Julian by his side, Leo felt a little more grounded. He nodded and whispered his assent. Next came the ceremony in the grand hall. Leo had no parents and Julian had only his mother, so they only needed to pay respects to her. Mrs. Blackwood was the picture of maternal grace today, showing no trace of the woman who had recently berated her son for his disobedience. Before the ceremony, she even graciously declared that since Leo was a man, he didn't need to kneel. The sentiment was enough. Julian hadn't planned on making Leo kneel anyway, a fact his mother had likely guessed, so she played her part in the charade. After they had paid their respects, just before exchanging vows, Julian leaned in and asked, in a voice only they could hear, if he had made up his mind. Once this was done, there was no turning back. Leo had been calmly going through the motions, but Julian's sudden question caught him off guard. He thought about it seriously for a moment, then shook his head. No regrets. A faint smile appeared on Julian's face. Then I'm relieved, Mr. Blackwood. And so they exchanged their vows. The ceremony was complete. The grooms were escorted by their best men to a private room to change while the guests were entertained at the reception in the main hall. For now, the first part of the wedding was over. Though the ceremony had been streamlined compared to a traditional one, Leo was exhausted from the non-stop rush since early morning. He sat on the edge of the bed, loosening his formal jacket and stretching his arms and back. I'm so tired. Julian, taking off his own jacket nearby, casually mentioned that they would have to go out and make a toast soon. He assured Leo he only had to make an appearance and didn't have to actually drink. Leo asked if that was really okay, his voice a mix of hope and apprehension. Julian responded with a rhetorical question, asking who would dare force him to drink. Leo felt relieved. He wasn't a drinker and had been worrying about how to navigate the toasts. The outfits for the reception were tailored white suits, more form-fitting than the ceremony attire. The suit accentuated Leo's narrow waist and long legs, and the curve of his backside. After changing, Julian turned to see Leo bent over, tying his shoelaces. The white fabric stretched taut, outlining a perfect, rounded shape. On impulse, Julian couldn't resist reaching out and giving it a light pat. It was firm with a satisfying spring. Leo yelped, startled like a rabbit ambushed by a wolf, nearly jumping to his feet. Julian. Seeing who it was, he called out his name without thinking. Julian's expression was unruffled. What? You're a pervert. How is touching my own husband's ass perverted? Julian countered. By old standards, we should be consummating the marriage by now. In broad daylight, with guests just outside the door, Julian's shameless words only reinforced Leo's opinion of him as a pervert. I'm not talking to you anymore. Leo turned his back to Julian, facing away as he fumbled with his shoelaces. He had never worn these shoes before and was struggling. Seeing this, Julian knelt on one knee and tapped his hand. "Let me." "Oh." Leo handed the laces to Julian, watching as he skillfully tied them. Today, Julian was dressed more formally than ever. His hair was perfectly styled, his suit impeccably pressed, and even his shave was closer than usual. At this distance, Leo could see every eyelash, every pore. His heart began to beat a little faster. Julian looked up. "Yes?" "Nothing. Thank you. You don't need to thank me." Julian wrapped his arms around Leo's waist and lifted him onto his lap. "This is your home now." He assured him not to worry about his mother. She was a woman who cared deeply about appearances. Since she had allowed him through the door today, she wouldn't make things difficult for him in the future, if only to protect her own reputation and avoid gossip. Besides, Julian continued, "I'm the one who calls the shots in this family. You are the person I legally married. No one will dare disrespect you. If you want to come back for holidays and visit, we will. If you don't, we'll live our own lives. We don't need to concern ourselves with them." Julian had anticipated all of Leo's worries. The grand spectacle today was a deliberate statement of his intentions, to prevent anyone from looking down on Leo in the future. Otherwise, he would have never gone through such trouble. All he really wanted was to have Leo to himself. "Let's go," he said. "Time for the toast." Julian's wedding had been sudden, and many of the guests were meeting Leo for the first time. They had only heard he came from a humble, orphaned background. While they pitied his past, they also marveled at his good fortune. No matter what hardships he had endured, this was a true rags-to-riches story. However, upon seeing Leo in person, they understood why he had such luck. He was strikingly beautiful. Despite his supposed hard-knock life, he showed no signs of it. Instead, he looked as if he had been delicately raised in a wealthy household. His skin was flawless, his eyes clear, and his demeanor gentle and reserved, yet not timid. Standing beside Julian, it was hard to tell who had gotten the better deal. No wonder Julian had made such a fuss over marrying a man. He was clearly showing off his prize. It wasn't until the toasts began at the reception that Leo realized what Julian had meant by "you don't have to drink." It meant Julian would drink for him. Leo had never seen Julian drunk. Seeing him accept every toast without hesitation, he assumed he could hold his liquor. After a brief period of worry, he let him be. Some friends teased Julian for being so protective, remarking they never knew he was the type to make such a bold, quiet move, getting married without a word. Julian didn't deny any of it, playing the part of a devoted husband perfectly. Leo couldn't tell if Julian was acting or if it was genuine, only that he was a master of changing faces. Normally so aloof, he was now playing the part of an affable newlywed. After a round of toasts, Julian's complexion had changed slightly. When they were finally able to sit down and eat, he held a cup of hot tea, sipping it slowly. His gaze seemed a bit unfocused. Leo grew concerned and leaned closer, whispering, "Julian, are you okay?" Julian turned his head, squinting. His voice was low and raspy. "I'm fine. Should we go rest for a bit?" "It's okay, don't worry." As he spoke, Julian leaned in and gently kissed Leo's forehead. "Eat something. You've had a long day." Now Leo was certain Julian was drunk. He had just kissed him in front of everyone. Seated at their table were all of Julian's closest friends. Their expressions were a priceless mixture of shock and amusement. Some stared wide-eyed, while others looked away as if they couldn't bear to watch. Leo's face flushed crimson. He ducked his head, turning slightly. "Don't do that. People will see." Am I not allowed to kiss my own husband? Julian sounded displeased and kissed him again. Drunk people are unreasonable. Leo couldn't control him, so he gave in. Fine, do what you want. The friends at the table were perceptive. They all looked away as if they hadn't seen a thing, resuming their conversations and drinking, careful not to spoil the couple's moment. Out of the corner of his eye, Leo saw two familiar faces, Miles and Owen, whispering and smirking together, surely concocting some gossip. Finally satisfied, Julian smiled faintly and stroked Leo's head. Good boy. Julian was truly drunk. According to Miles, this was the first time he had ever seen Julian this intoxicated. Even in their wildest younger days, Julian had never shown such obvious signs of being drunk. Married life certainly changes a man. Miles teased Leo deliberately. Can we still call him out for a night on the town? Before Leo could answer, Julian turned to Miles with a frown. Don't tease him. Oh? Miles drawled sarcastically. Can't even say a word to him? You better keep a close eye on your husband. Then, an older man with a younger spouse, you'll have plenty to worry about in the future. The words were crude, but not without a grain of truth. He didn't have to wait for the future. There were already vultures circling. Vance and his parents were also at the wedding. Throughout the entire event, Vance's eyes had been fixed on Leo, his intentions written all over his face. This was Leo's first formal appearance in such a large crowd. Besides Vance, many others were watching him. At first, Leo felt uncomfortable, but he gradually grew accustomed to it. As Julian had said, being with him meant attending such events would become a regular occurrence. It was time for Leo to get used to his new identity. After the guests departed, Leo helped Julian upstairs to rest. The master suite had also been meticulously decorated for the occasion, with candles, plush pillows, and a silk comforter. There were even traditional good luck charms scattered on the bed. Seeing all this, Leo blushed again, remembering Julian's jokes about him having a baby. Julian saw them too, squinting. Old-fashioned superstitions. Don't mind them. He sat on the bed and pulled Leo into his lap, trapping him between his legs. He looked up. Although, with an ass that round, you look like you'd be fertile. What are you talking about? Leo knew Julian was drunk. His speech was slower than usual, and his eyes were slightly unfocused. He had heard that drunk men couldn't perform, but pressed between Julian's legs, he could clearly feel evidence to the contrary. Are you actually drunk or not? Why? If you're drunk, how can you still? Leo's eyes flickered downwards. Julian understood immediately. He chuckled. Then in one smooth motion, he flipped Leo onto the bed, pinning him beneath him. When I want you, it doesn't matter when. Haven't you heard the saying? An hour of a spring night is worth 1,000 gold pieces. Julian spoke slowly. A wedding night like this, it might only happen once in a lifetime. We can't waste it. The silk comforter was smooth and soft. The deep crimson fabric made Leo's skin look as white as snow. The sight made Julian's gaze burn hotter. Under that scorching stare, Leo felt himself melting, like the celebratory candles by the bedside, dripping into a pool of flowing, ambiguous red. He was still wearing the pure white suit, a white camellia blooming amidst the room's sea of red, waiting to be stripped of its pristine petals to reveal the ripe fruit beneath. Julian's voice was now laced with desire, low and husky. Darling, you look so beautiful today. Leo was more than beautiful, he was breathtaking. Julian had been holding back all day, and now he could finally undo his buttons with his own hands. Julian, we're married. Isn't it time for a new name? Julian murmured, slowly peeling away the layers of fabric exposing Leo's slender body to the air. His hand traced a path from the pale column of his neck down to his soft stomach, where it rested, pressing gently. The man on the bed's eyes reddened. "Don't, Julian, I haven't even started." Julian's gaze was like a warm, scalding liquid flowing over Leo's skin, yet his tone was deceptively calm, as if he truly were doing nothing at all. The last button came undone, leaving Leo completely under Julian's control. "Julian, try another name. I don't like that one." Husband." The night was short, and Julian didn't waste a moment. He was far from drunk. His mind was sharp as a tack. He had promised to make Leo cry, and he did. He had promised to make Leo wet himself, and in the end, he held him in the bathroom like a child, forcing his legs apart. Leo had never been humiliated like this. His back was pressed against a blazing hot chest, the hands gripping his thighs like iron clamps. What was most devastating was that his mind was screaming no, but his body couldn't resist the surging heat. The sound of running water filled the small room. Leo collapsed into Julian's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The man behind him finally released his hold. He caressed Leo's stomach, whispering, "Baby is gonna have a little baby." "No, I won't. You're a bastard. You promised you wouldn't do this." Sob. Wetting himself in front of Julian was mortifying enough. Now, hearing him say this, Leo felt a fresh wave of despair and humiliation. "Why are you crying so hard?" Julian finally realized he might have gone too far. He turned Leo around and held him, trying to soothe him. "Don't cry, don't cry. It's my fault, I lost control. It's bad luck to cry like this on our wedding day." Leo had been crying out of pure misery, but at Julian's last words, he forced himself to choke back his tears, his body trembling with soft, hitching sobs. Julian's voice was filled with a certain unspeakable satisfaction. "Good boy." Leo sniffled. "I want to take a bath." Because of what had happened, the bath took longer than usual. Everything in the bathroom, down to the smallest toiletries, had tiny red double happiness stickers on them. Even the bath bubbles were pink, creating an atmosphere of hazy, romantic ambiguity. Leo leaned against Julian, surrounded by the festive red symbols, a belated sense of newlywed shyness washing over him. It was ridiculous to feel shy after sleeping together so many times. Julian sensed his thoughts and deliberately asked, "What are you thinking about? Your face is so red." Leo snapped out of his reverie. "No, nothing." He turned to face Julian, draping himself over him like a kitten and holding him close. After a moment, he whispered, "I'm a little tired." "Sleep then. I'll carry you back." Leo closed his eyes in Julian's arms, quickly falling into a deep sleep. He was so exhausted that he didn't even stir when Julian dried him off and carried him back to bed. The next morning, Leo and Julian went to serve tea to Julian's mother. Leo was still intimidated by her and had braced himself for a cold reception. But Mrs. Blackwood wasn't as harsh as he'd expected. While not warm, she was at least civil. It seemed Julian was right. With his support, Leo could live in the Blackwood household without worry. The rest was a formality. They exchanged pleasantries. Mrs. Blackwood accepted Leo's tea and gave him a thick red envelope, and then offered some standard advice on marriage. And with that, the ritual was complete. Leo was incredibly sleepy. It felt as though his head had just hit the pillow before the sun came up. It was as if he hadn't slept at all. Julian knew he was exhausted, so after breakfast with his mother, he made an excuse about having business to attend to. Mother and son understood each other perfectly, and she didn't press him to stay. Leo slept in the car on the way back, and then again upstairs in their bed once they got home. He finally felt rested. Julian had gone out for a meeting but promised to be back for dinner. Leo sometimes thought of Julian as a tireless machine that never needed sleep. As he was thinking, his phone vibrated on the bedside table. It was an unknown number. He answered it. A mature, magnetic female voice came through the line. "It's me. Happy wedding." Leo was momentarily stunned. Took him a few seconds to place the voice. It sounded like Mrs. Adler. He answered woodenly, "Mrs. Adler, thank you." She asked if he was free to meet for a coffee. He agreed. After hanging up, Leo still felt dazed. He wasn't close with Mrs. Adler. In fact, because of their respective roles in Mr. Adler's life, he was a little afraid of her. But the last time they had met, she had given him the photo album Mr. Adler had made, which made him think she wasn't a bad person. This time, Leo was more cautious. He arranged to meet her at a coffee shop near the house and asked the driver to wait for him outside. Mrs. Adler had arrived a few minutes early and was sitting by the window with a cup of hot coffee. She hadn't changed in the months since he'd last seen her, still exuding an air of refined, high society elegance. Leo approached and sat down opposite her, greeting her politely. Mrs. Adler turned and offered a faint smile. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Leo felt anxious, wondering if he should ask why she wanted to see him. She preempted him by taking a red envelope from her purse and pushing it across the table. "This is for you." "What?" Leo opened the envelope. Inside was a check for a staggering amount. He stared at it wide-eyed. "Why?" She explained that Mr. Adler had made some investments in his name that were difficult to liquidate. Compounded by the complex family dynamics and the many relatives eyeing his estate, it had taken some time to sort everything out. His wedding was a fitting occasion to give it to him as a gift. But Leo couldn't understand. It was a substantial amount of money, and Mrs. Adler had no reason to give it to him. She told him that she believed if Mr. Adler were alive and Leo had decided to marry someone else, he would have given him even more. She insisted it was what he deserved and he shouldn't overthink it. Leo hesitated, then placed the check back in the envelope. "Do you not hate me?" After a long silence, a barely perceptible smile touched Mrs. Adler's lips. Her gaze remained calm. "No." She clarified that, in the end, his death wasn't his fault. On the way home, Leo replayed her words in his mind. "You know that he had a heart condition, but it was more serious than he let on. The doctors confirmed the cause of death was an acute myocardial infarction. It had nothing to do with you. If anyone is to blame, it's a lack of first aid knowledge on your part, and his own negligence in not properly explaining his condition to you. We were friends since childhood. Our marriage was an arrangement. There was never a true marital bond between us, so I never cared about your relationship with him. That day, I slapped you out of anger and impulse, and for that, I apologize. In any case, what's past is past. Now that you've found your own happiness, you should look forward. Don't carry the guilt of his death. He wouldn't want to see you unhappy. I've booked a flight back to England tomorrow. This will likely be the last time we see each other. Once again, I wish you a happy marriage. Julian Blackwood is a good man." Leo closed his eyes, leaning his head against the cool car window. Mr. Adler had left him enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life, even if he were to leave Julian. Even in death, he was still protecting him. A wave of sadness washed over Leo. Mrs. Adler had told him not to blame himself, but he couldn't help wondering if Mr. Adler could have been saved if he hadn't been so careless. He had been so naive. Mr. Adler had said it was a chronic condition, nothing serious, and he had believed him without a second thought. When he got home, Leo was still in low spirits. He put the check away, deciding not to touch the money for now. After resting for a bit, he went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. After Vance's visit, Julian had half-jokingly mentioned he'd never seen Leo cook. Since it was their first day as a married couple, Leo thought it was a good opportunity to make dinner for him. He had learned to cook at a young age in the orphanage, but the more complex dishes were things Mr. Adler had taught him. Mr. Adler had been skilled at everything: gardening, cooking, crafts, anything that made life more beautiful. He was very different from Julian, who lacked such leisurely pursuits. Leo planned to make a simple stew and a couple of side dishes. Julian didn't eat heavy or greasy food at night. Living with him, Leo's own palate had gradually become lighter. This was probably why Julian was in such good health. Despite his busy schedule, he maintained a strict exercise routine and was never indulgent, except when it came to their nights together. He was disciplined to a fault. As Leo shaped meatballs, he thought he should also develop an exercise habit. After all, with so much money now, he needed to live a long life to enjoy it. Before the meatballs went into the pot, Julian came home. Preoccupied, Leo was slow to react to the sound of the door. He put down the meatballs and went out to greet him, finding Julian holding a large bouquet of roses. Julian explained he'd bought them from a flower shop he passed. He said he'd been so busy lately that he had forgotten to buy him flowers. He placed them on the counter and noticed Leo's apron. "What are you doing?" "Making dinner," Leo said, a little shyly. "It's not ready yet." Julian paused, then smiled. "A rare sight. Mr. Blackwood is cooking." He came over and stroked the back of Leo's head. "Let me see what you've made." Still in his suit, Julian followed Leo into the kitchen. A pot of soup was simmering on the stove, a plate of small meatballs waiting beside it, and chopped vegetables were prepped for stir-frying. Julian nodded in satisfaction. "Looks good. All my favorites." Leo told him to wait outside, that it would be ready soon. Julian asked if he needed help, but Leo insisted he could manage on his own. Julian's smile deepened. "All right, you carry on." Usually, when Julian cooked, Leo would wait obediently in the dining room. But with the roles reversed, Julian changed his clothes, washed his hands, and couldn't resist coming in to help. He passed Leo spices and plates, set the table, and kept a watchful eye on the stove, worried Leo would burn himself. Despite his careful supervision, a splash of hot oil still landed on Leo's hand while he was stir-frying. Leo didn't say anything at the time. It wasn't until they were sitting down to eat that Julian noticed a small red mark on his hand. He frowned. "Did you burn yourself? Does it hurt?" He asked to see it. Leo held out his hand obediently. "It doesn't hurt." His skin was so fair that any mark was obvious, but it wasn't actually painful. Julian gently blew on the red spot. "From now on, you should just wait for me to cook. Watching you is nerve-wracking." "Don't be so dramatic." Julian changed the subject. "The driver said you went out today. Where did you go?" he asked casually. Leo thought for a moment and decided to be truthful. "To a coffee shop nearby. I met someone." "Who?" "Mr. Adler's wife, Mrs. Adler." At the mention of the name, Julian's movements paused. He asked without inflection, what did she want? Leo answered everything he was asked, his voice nervous but honest. "She gave me a wedding gift and wished me happiness." Julian looked up, his gaze cool. "I thought you two weren't close. And that she didn't like you." The air grew still. After a moment, Leo lowered his eyes. "She said it was from Mr. Adler." Julian said nothing more. Leo didn't dare to look at him. He could have hidden it. Julian wasn't the type to pry. But he felt he should tell him. After a long pause, Julian spoke calmly. Since it was given to you, you should keep it. I'll go thank Mrs. Adler in person another day. Now let's eat. Because of this small interlude, conversation at the dinner table was sparse. After eating, Leo arranged the flowers Julian had brought home in a vase. Julian was now in the habit of trimming the stems and letting them soak in a bucket first, so they were perfectly bloomed by the time Leo arranged them. Today's bouquet was all roses, a mix of white and pink. A thought occurred to Leo, and he asked Julian why there were no red ones. Red roses seemed more festive and appropriate for a wedding. Julian's expression became oddly unnatural. He cleared his throat. They were out of red. Oh, if you like them, I'll buy you some tomorrow. Leo wanted to say he didn't particularly like them, but seeing Julian's expression, he swallowed his words and nodded. Okay, thank you, Julian. After arranging the flowers, Leo was about to head upstairs for a shower when Julian, sitting on the sofa, put down his phone and beckoned to him. Come here. Leo obediently went over and was pulled onto Julian's lap. What is it, Julian? Nothing. I was just thinking, when will you get used to calling me husband? Julian could say such things with a completely straight face, but every time Leo heard them, he blushed. He whispered that it was embarrassing. You've never called anyone that before? Leo froze. He wasn't sure what before Julian was referring to. He lowered his lashes. No, I always called him Mr. Adler. Julian's tone was light, but it was impossible to tell if he was being genuine. In that case, I suppose I should thank Mr. Adler. Leo pursed his lips. It was just a habit, so I never changed it. So, if he had asked you to call him husband, you would have? No, that's not what I meant. Leo, I have a question for you. Leo looked up, startled. What? Julian looked into his eyes, his expression unreadable. Between me and Mr. Adler, who do you like more? What kind of question was that? Though he didn't know why Julian was asking, it was obvious what answer he wanted to hear. Leo knew this, but he didn't answer immediately. As patrons, both Mr. Adler and Julian had been generous and lacked any of the rumored dark appetites. They had treated him very well. As partners, Mr. Adler had been gentle and thoughtful, his only failing being his existing family, which meant he couldn't give Leo a real home. As for Julian, is the question that difficult? Julian's voice cut through his thoughts. Leo came back to himself. You're different. I can't choose. How are we different? Mr. Adler was the one who supported me growing up. I'm very grateful to him. And me? You are. Leo's voice trailed off. My husband. Julian's eyes narrowed, his expression still unreadable. Forget our titles. Just as people. You still can't choose? Julian was being strange today, fixated on such a pointless question. Besides, Mr. Adler was gone. Even if Leo did choose, it wouldn't change anything. Silence fell. Leo wanted to avoid the question, but it seemed Julian was determined to have an answer. Finally, Leo conceded. Mr. Adler was very good. And you are too. Right now, I like you a little more. After speaking, he glanced up to gauge Julian's reaction and saw he didn't seem pleased. Assuming his answer had angered him, he whispered an apology. Julian's gaze darkened. No need to apologize. I'm not blaming you. It was just a casual question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. After a beat, he seemed to recall that Leo had said he liked him more, and a fleeting look of discomfort crossed his face. He seemed to want to say something to smooth it over, but couldn't find the words. They rarely had moments of such awkward silence. Sensing Julian's displeasure, Leo gently tugged on his shirt. "I do like you." Julian provided him with a strong sense of security, a lot of money, and the stable life he craved. He had no reason not to like him. He suddenly remembered something Mr. Adler had taught him. Never be stingy with telling a man you like him, because they are the easiest to trap with sweet words. It was a lesson Leo hadn't fully mastered. Julian raised his eyes slightly. He didn't speak, but his expression had softened considerably. Leo carefully wrapped his arms around his neck and, looking into his eyes, said, "I will always like you." After a long silence, Julian nodded. "Okay." Leo said he liked him. Logically, Julian should have been satisfied with that answer. But he wasn't. Or rather, he wasn't dissatisfied with Leo's answer, but with himself for asking in the first place. Expending energy on a meaningless question, making Leo uncomfortable and himself unhappy. It wasn't his style. What was wrong with him? Julian had his most trusted people start investigating everything about Mr. Adler. He had known the man for years, their relationship cordial but distant. Before Adler's retirement, they had occasionally played golf together. Looking back, they had lost touch around the time Adler brought Leo into his home. Julian had previously looked into Leo's background. In Leo's upbringing, Adler was both a crucial and a peripheral figure. He had funded the orphanage where Leo grew up, enabling him to have a stable childhood, but he had rarely intervened directly, as if Leo were just one of many children he supported. Their story truly began when Adler brought Leo to live with him. It was as if Adler had been struck by a sudden fever, pouring all his energy into doting on Leo. Others might not have seen it, but from Leo's occasional remarks and his own investigation, Julian was certain. Adler had loved Leo. Not the affection of a patron for a lover, but a selfless, obsessive, possessive love. When he first realized this, Julian had found it amusing. A man like Adler, calculating, self-interested, emotionally detached, falling for someone so completely mismatched in status, age, and experience. But now, Julian wasn't laughing. In fact, he felt an unprecedented, intense desire to know every detail of Adler and Leo's time together. What had Adler done that, nearly a year after his death, Leo still held him in such high regard? Julian knew in his heart that he probably wouldn't find any hidden secrets, because the truth was right in front of him. Adler had fallen in love with Leo, accompanied him, cared for him, cherished him, and then, with his abrupt death, had secured a permanent place in Leo's heart. That death had also become the most formidable barrier for anyone else trying to win Leo's affection. A cunning old fox. Closing his laptop, Julian leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes wearily. He never thought he would stumble like this. That evening, Owen organized a get-together at a private club and invited Julian. Owen had wanted Julian to bring Leo, but considering Leo's past negative experiences at such places, Julian went alone. Feeling morose, Julian had a few too many drinks. Miles sensed something was wrong and found a moment to sit beside him. "What's up? You just got married and you're already moping. Don't tell me you're having second thoughts." Julian put down his glass and gave Miles a look. "When are you going to stop talking nonsense? You're the one with the storm cloud over your head. Like someone owes you $1 million. I'm fine." After a moment, Julian suddenly spoke. "Miles, what kind of person do you think Mr. Adler was? Old man Adler?" Miles was taken aback. "In what sense?" "Any sense." Miles thought for a moment. "A smart man. Deep, shrewd. Not a bad temper. Just had some bad luck." The answer was useless. It wasn't what Julian wanted to hear, and his mood darkened further. Why the sudden interest? Miles then realized. Did something happen? No, just some things I can't figure out. Julian himself couldn't articulate what he wanted to ask. Was he trying to find out how well Adler had treated Leo? How would Miles know that? Forget it. Julian drained his glass. I'm overthinking it. Having been friends for so many years, Miles easily sensed something was amiss. His eyes widened. Don't tell me. You've fallen in love with Leo? He asked it tentatively, more horrified than surprised, as if it were the most shocking thing imaginable. Julian froze. His first instinct was to deny it. How is that possible? As if to add conviction, he added, I just think that since he's married to me now, I should at least treat him better than Adler did. All right, stop explaining. Miles waved his hand dismissively, his tone a mix of pity and exasperation. The more you explain, the guiltier you sound. I knew there was a reason you suddenly married him. So that's it. You're done for, Julian, you're toast. You fell for a heartless little fox. Julian frowned. Don't talk about him like that. How could Leo be heartless? He remembered every small kindness from Adler. The thought made Julian's stomach clench, but then he remembered the worn-out teddy bear he'd given Leo, which Leo still cherished, and he felt a little better. Miles grew more agitated. The point isn't how I talk about him. You're really something. Nearly 40 and having your first crush. An old house catching fire. You're one of a kind. I'm 35. You're 35, and how old is he? 20? 21? In another era, you could be his father. Why are your words always so unpleasant? Julian's frown deepened. Are you trying to pick a fight? Miles finally fell silent, moodily downing a large gulp of his drink. After his emotions settled, he asked, Do you really like him? Why else would I marry him? I don't mean that kind of like. I mean that kind. Which kind? Don't play dumb. What other kind is there? You like him. You're in love with him. You've fallen head over heels. This time, Julian didn't immediately deny it. He thought for a long time before saying, I don't know. Miles had said it was Julian's first crush, but that wasn't true. Julian had had 2 brief relationships in college and knew what infatuation and affection felt like. But his relationship with Leo wasn't like the innocent, straightforward romance of youth. Julian found it hard to say whether he truly liked Leo or simply enjoyed the comfortable, happy feeling of being with him. As for love, the biggest difference between love and like was that love brought suspicion, jealousy, obsession, and dependency. It also inspired selfless devotion, constant longing, and a willing submission to being tamed and bound. Julian's silence said it all. Miles let out a long sigh. If I had known, I would have stopped you that day. Why? Let's be realistic. You know what he wants from you. In a relationship like yours, talking about love is completely impractical. Miles didn't know about the prenuptial agreement Julian and Leo had signed. If he had, he might have fainted from anger. Julian, of course, wasn't going to tell him. He just remained silent for a long time before saying, That's why I asked you what kind of person you thought Adler was. What does that have to do with anything? Adler was a pragmatist, rational to the point of selfishness. You've dealt with him. You should know. Miles was even more confused. So? Julian looked at Miles, his expression blank. He loved Leo. Miles stared. Then his face contorted as if a massive headache had just struck. Leo was the one he brought home. Of course he liked him. No, I mean that kind of like. Or maybe love. Now Miles was speechless, his mouth agape. His brow furrowed in confusion as he stared at Julian. Julian poured himself another drink. What I mean is, it's not an impractical thing. Wait, are you drunk? Miles snapped out of it, reaching out to feel Julian's forehead. Or are you running a fever? Listen to yourself. What am I saying? Adler fell in love with Leo, so you can too? Adler wrote Leo into his will, so you're gonna write him into yours? Julian had had a lot to drink, but he wasn't incoherent. He thought for a moment. It's not a causal relationship. I'm just explaining to you that it's possible. But have you considered one thing? Does Leo like you? Julian clutched his glass, silent for a moment. He says he does. And love? I don't know. Probably not yet. Miles seemed to be at a loss for words. He tried to reason with him patiently. I'm telling you, don't be rash. Your relationship doesn't need this crap called love. You give him enough money, and he'll stay with you and be completely obedient. He suddenly had a thought. I get it now. I know why you're like this. You've been bewitched by this little fox. How long has it been since you've been with anyone else? Listen to me, find a pretty young thing to sleep with tonight. I guarantee you'll be fine tomorrow. Julian thought Miles was insane. The suggestion was so ridiculous he didn't even bother to respond. But Miles misunderstood his silence. He decisively pulled Owen over. Owen, got any fresh faces around here lately? Pick a good one for Mr. Blackwood. Huh? Owen looked utterly bewildered, glancing between Miles and Julian. Didn't he just get married? Does he have a thing for cheating? Julian's voice was cold and impatient. I do not. He glared at Miles. Can you stop with these terrible ideas? I'm perfectly fine. Why would I look for someone else? I'm just trying to help you. Give you a change of pace so you're not so completely mesmerized by that little fox, wasting your time thinking about love and all that nonsense. Wait. I'm lost. Owen interrupted, trying to process the conversation. A moment later, realization dawned. Julian, you're serious? He stared, as if he'd just heard the most scandalous news. Both of them had the same reaction, and Julian was thoroughly annoyed. He hadn't been sure about his feelings for Leo before, but now, spurred by defiance, he admitted it. So what if I am? I just found someone I like to marry and build a life with. You'd think I'd broken some divine law. What's wrong with you two? His outburst stunned Miles and Owen into silence. Owen, in particular, looked shell-shocked at being dragged into this drama. After a few seconds of silence, he cautiously asked Miles, So, do I still need to find someone for him? Find my ass. Julian swore, a rare occurrence. What did I tell you last time? Are you listening to him or to me? Owen flinched and quickly changed his tune. Listening to you. Definitely you. No one got it. Just as the tension peaked, Julian's phone rang. Owen saw Leo's name on the screen and wisely shut his mouth. Julian stared at the screen for a few seconds, the impatience and anger on his face gradually melting away. He answered, his tone back to normal. Hello? Whatever was said on the other end brought a faint smile to his lips. I'll be home late. You go to sleep, don't wait up for me. I know. Good night. Go to sleep, be good. Hanging up, Julian stood and grabbed his jacket. I'm leaving. Put tonight's tab on my account. Hey, Miles started to say something, but Julian was already gone, leaving without a second glance. Recalling the way Julian had been on the phone, Miles and Owen looked at each other, speechless. After a long silence, Owen said, Don't ever drag me into your messes again. I can't afford to get on his bad side. Miles was momentarily choked up, then waved his hand in frustration. Just you wait. We'll see how this little fox ruins him. Leo hadn't planned on calling Julian. The weather had been hot lately, and seeking relief, he had eaten a large slice of iced watermelon after his evening walk. His stomach had immediately rebelled, and he spent the night running to the bathroom. By the end, he was completely drained. He took some medication, and the discomfort finally subsided. When it was time for bed, Leo lay alone, his stomach still feeling unsettled. He tossed and turned, unable to sleep, which was when he finally called Julian. He hadn't asked him to come home, only said he was going to bed and asked if he should wait up. Julian had told him not to wait and to get some sleep. 20 minutes later, the lights in the driveway came on, followed by the sound of a car pulling in. A little while later, Julian came in, quietly changed his clothes, checked on Leo by the bed, and then went to the bathroom to shower. A few minutes later, Julian was in bed, stroking the hair at the back of Leo's head and pulling him into his arms. Leo opened his eyes. "Julian, still awake?" Julian looked down. In the dim light, he could see that Leo looked pale. "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" "My stomach hurts. I ate something bad." Leo's voice was soft as he snuggled into Julian's embrace. "I'm sorry. I ate the iced watermelon." No wonder he had called. A wave of tenderness washed over Julian. He asked gently, "Did you take any medicine?" Leo nodded. He took Julian's hand and placed it on his own stomach. "It still hurts. Can you rub it for me?" Through the thin layer of his pajamas, Leo's stomach felt soft and fragile. Julian, aware of his own strength, was careful not to press too hard, gently rubbing Leo's belly as if stroking a cat. "Why didn't you tell me you were feeling unwell? It wasn't that serious." "It's okay." Leo rested his head on Julian's arm and caught the faint scent of alcohol. "Did you have a drink?" "Yes, a little." Julian's hand was large and warm, and it soothed the ache in Leo's stomach. The discomfort lessened significantly. Leo closed his eyes, lulled by Julian's warmth, and drifted off to sleep in his arms. Youthful bodies recover quickly. The next morning, Leo was completely fine. He went downstairs to find Julian making breakfast. Banana pancakes with honey, steamed egg with shrimp, sweet potato and oat milk, all gentle on the stomach. Leo went to Julian's side. "Today's breakfast is so lavish. I missed dinner with you last night. This is to make up for it." "I'm not that petty." Julian put down the plate he was holding. "I can't take my eyes off you for one day without you eating something you shouldn't. The housekeeper told me it wasn't just one slice of watermelon. It was half a watermelon." "It wasn't a very big half," Leo muttered defensively. It had been so hot lately. Craving something cool wasn't his fault. As they were talking, the housekeeper returned from grocery shopping with the mail. "Leo, there's a letter for you." "For me?" Leo took it, confused. "Who's it from?" The envelope only had his name on it, no return address or postmark. It had clearly been placed directly in the mailbox. Leo tore it open. Inside were 2 tickets to an opera. La Traviata? There was also a note, a humble invitation for Mr. Leo to share a beautiful weekend. That Vance character was certainly bold. Leo shoved the tickets and note back into the envelope and looked up at Julian, flustered. Julian's expression, as expected, was grim. He took the envelope from Leo. "This weekend, I'm taking you to the amusement park." Leo's eyes lit up, and he threw his arms around Julian. "Really?" Julian's face softened slightly. "Really?" Just then, Leo's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Julian told him to answer it. Leo let go of Julian and picked up the phone. "Hello? It's me, Leo." A familiar, flippant male voice came through the receiver. "Did you get the tickets?" Leo glanced up at Julian. "Yes, I did. So? Are you interested? I'll pick you up this weekend." and we can go to the theater together. I'm sorry, I have other plans this weekend. Oh, but these are prime seats I had to pull some strings to get. Are you sure you can't make it? Leo was never good at refusing people. He was struggling for a reply when Julian took the phone from him and put it to his ear. Vance. The man on the other end paused, then chuckled. Are you serious? You're even listening in on his calls? We're having breakfast together. It's not that I wanted to listen, Julian said coldly. Leo is spending the weekend with me. He's not free to go to the opera with you. And another thing, cut out these games. Leo isn't a 3-year-old. He's not going to be so easily tricked. With that, Julian handed the phone back to Leo and set his utensils for him. Leo took the phone. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. I have to go eat now. Goodbye. After hanging up, Leo picked up his spoon and said carefully, I never gave him my number. I know Julian's tone was flat. If he wants to find something out, he has his ways. Let's eat. What you said about the amusement park, is that still on? Julian's expression improved. Of course. When have I ever lied to you? Leo relaxed, a shy smile spreading across his face. We'll pick up the cat, too, Julian added. The Devon Rex cat was a precious creature, delivered personally by a specialist on a private flight from England. It had arrived at a local cattery yesterday for a health check. The owner said it needed another day or two of observation before it could be taken home. Leo, of course, had no idea how much trouble it was to acquire a cat, and Julian had no intention of telling him. The little gold digger would worry about the cost. If he knew how expensive the cat was, he probably wouldn't even scold it if it scratched him. Julian understood Leo's quirks perfectly. First, he needed a foundation of material security. Second, he needed a lot of companionship. And finally, he needed gentle, attentive care. Much more difficult than raising a cat. Hearing they were going to get the cat, Leo couldn't hide his delight. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Julian. What's so special about today? So many good things are happening. Julian couldn't help but smile back. Are you happy? Leo nodded vigorously. So happy. I feel like you're happier now than on our wedding day. Leo hesitated, then said innocently, I was happy on our wedding day too. It's just different. He couldn't say the truth. He hadn't wanted to get married, but he had wanted a cat. Of course it was different. But if he said that, not only the cat but he himself might be thrown out. The weekend arrived. Julian cleared his schedule, canceling all work and social engagements to take Leo to the amusement park. It was Leo's first time and Julian's as well. Julian's upbringing had been strict. His mother had wanted him to be a prodigy, leaving no time for such frivolous pursuits. As he grew older, he lost the inclination to play. Immersed in the world of high-stakes business, he had long forgotten that such simple, inexpensive joy existed. If not for Leo, he never would have set foot in an amusement park. Looking around, Julian saw men his age mostly holding a child's hand in their right and their wife's purse in their left. He felt a little out of place and tugged his cap down, trailing behind Leo like a bodyguard. But he soon realized no one was paying them any mind. Everyone was absorbed in their own fun. The crowd was full of people in eccentric outfits, all perfectly at ease, so he gradually relaxed. Leo was oblivious to Julian's initial discomfort. He was ecstatic, pulling Julian's hand and looking around, wanting to try everything. Finally, Julian pointed to a log flume on the park map. Let's start with this one. I hear it's popular. So they went on the park's most famous water ride. Leo screamed from top to bottom as their raft plunged down the steep drop, shrinking into his seat while fumbling for Julian's hand, only feeling secure once he had a firm grip. After one ride, both of them were soaked, and Julian felt like his bones had been rattled loose. But Leo was buzzing with excitement, ready to run to the next ride before his clothes were even dry. Julian followed helplessly, asking, "Weren't you terrified just now? You recovered quickly." "I wasn't scared at all." Leo turned and grabbed Julian's hand. "Come on, let's go on the roller coaster." The age gap, usually unnoticeable, became apparent in moments like this. Julian was nearly 40. His usual companions were middle-aged businessmen, and his most strenuous outdoor activities were horseback riding or golf. He had never been on a contraption that shot straight up and then plunged down without braking. He felt like his heart was going to be ejected from his chest. In contrast, Leo, usually so frail, was full of life. After one ride, he wanted to go again. Julian waved his hands in surrender. "Have mercy, my old bones can't take another round of this." "You're not old," Leo whined, tugging on Julian's sleeve. "But I want to ride it again." It was a rare treat to be here, and who knew when they would come back. Leo wanted to experience everything he could. Pestered relentlessly, Julian finally gave in. "All right, let's go on something else first. We'll come back to this one after a break." Leo immediately agreed. They spent the entire day trying out all the popular rides, including the carousel, which was mostly filled with children, and the Ferris wheel, occupied by couples. Julian had never seen Leo so animated. It was as if he had shed his usual reserved demeanor and embraced the playful spirit appropriate for his age, transforming from a caged bird into one soaring in the sky. By the time Leo was tired, night had fallen. Julian took him to a scenic restaurant in the park for dinner, where they could watch the evening fireworks show. They sat by a huge floor-to-ceiling window, and soon brilliant fireworks bloomed in the night sky nearby. Leo pressed his hand against the glass, captivated. "So beautiful," he murmured. The sparkling fireworks reflected in his pupils like shattered stars. Julian followed his gaze. "They have fireworks every night. We can come back next weekend." Leo turned his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. Julian confirmed it. "When Chris graduates from college in a few years and takes over more of the business, I won't be so busy. Then I'll take you to amusement parks all over the world." Chris graduating from college. Leo calculated in his head. That was only 4 or 5 years away. Would he and Julian still be together then? Or rather, had Julian really included him in his future plans? Whether it was true or just something he said to placate him, in that moment, Leo felt a genuine happiness. Julian was the first person who had ever wanted to take him to an amusement park. It was late by the time they left. Julian had intended to pick up the cat the next day, but Leo couldn't wait. They changed course and headed to the cattery. The months-old Devon Rex kitten was still awake, playing with a ball of yarn with the cattery owner. She looked very serene, with large eyes and pure white fur. She was quietly batting at a pink ball of yarn. For some reason, she reminded Julian of Leo. "She looks like you," Julian said softly. Leo's face warmed. "How?" "Round eyes. Quiet and beautiful. You can pet her," the owner told Leo. About to have his very own kitten for the first time, Leo felt a thrill of nervousness. He crouched down and gently stroked the kitten's head. The cat didn't shy away. Instead, she rubbed her small head against Leo's hand. Leo felt his heart swell. He looked back at Julian, his face alight with joy. "She's so cute." Julian smiled indulgently. "Yes, she is." Leo played with the kitten for a while and listened as the owner explained the basics of cat care. He had already done his homework and had prepared everything the cat would need at home, all personally selected by him. Julian felt a faint twinge of dissatisfaction. Leo had only ever bought him one cigar box, but he had bought so many things for this cat. But he couldn't very well compete with a cat. He just stood by silently while Leo picked out cat toys, remarking pointedly, "Can she really play with all of those?" "Of course," Leo replied earnestly, completely missing the undercurrent in Julian's tone. "You can never have too many toys." So Julian shut his mouth, already holding a small grudge against the cat before it had even come home. They left with the kitten in a carrier provided by the owner. It was very late when they got home. Leo was tired and so was the cat. After settling her in her own little room, Leo remembered something important. They hadn't given her a name. What should we call her? Leo pondered, then looked up at Julian. What do you think? A simple name is good for longevity. How about Daisy? Leo's eyes widened. No way. He thought for a moment. Let's call her Daisy. Chris's dog is Buddy. Our cat can be Daisy. What kind of a name is that? Julian scoffed. Might as well call her Fluffy. Leo huffed and stroked the kitten's head. Daisy. The cat let out a soft meow. All right, time for bed, Julian said. Daisy needs to sleep too. You can play with her tomorrow. Okay. Leo stood up, reluctantly waving goodbye to the kitten. Good night, Daisy. This was probably the happiest day Leo had had since coming to live with Julian. After his shower, he lay in bed, unable to stop smiling. His joy was infectious, and Julian smiled as he stroked his head. A cat is all it takes to make you this happy. And the amusement park and the fireworks and the delicious dinner. And you were with me. Leo hugged Julian, snuggling into his arms. Thank you, Julian. You're the best. Leo was easy to please. A trip to the amusement park would keep him happy with anticipation for a week before and with happy memories for a week after. It took so little effort to make him happy, yet Julian found himself less and less willing to just go through the motions. He wanted every day to be as joyful for Leo as that day at the park. Some friends said it was just the novelty of the relationship. Julian knew it wasn't. Novelty couldn't sustain this much effort. He just liked Leo. Julian sighed. Leo, how many times have I told you? You need to change what you call me. Leo buried his face in Julian's shoulder, embarrassed, and whispered, Husband. A strange thought occurred to Julian. He was glad Leo couldn't have children. If they had a child, this little thing would surely revolve around the baby, no longer clinging to him like this. He couldn't bear that. Cat was enough. There could be no more living creatures in the house to distract Leo's attention. Julian made a silent resolution. The new cat needed some time to adjust to her environment and get used to her new owner. A few days later, Daisy revealed her true nature. She was a clingy little cat who followed Leo everywhere. The first thing Leo did was invite Chris and Buddy over. To show how much he valued the visit, Leo baked cupcakes and cookies, dressed Daisy in a new outfit, and cleaned the house meticulously, awaiting his guests. While baking, Leo video chatted with Julian. Julian had just finished a meeting and was leaning back in his office chair, reviewing documents while occasionally tapping at his computer. They were each busy with their own tasks, chatting idly. When Leo was about to take the cookies out of the oven, Julian reminded him to be careful not to get burned. I know I won't, Leo said, putting on oven mitts and carefully removing the baking sheet. The cookies were a success, perfectly shaped and colored. He held them up to the phone camera. Look, I see. My darling is so talented. The intimate praise made Leo a little shy. He changed the subject, asking if the cat could eat cookies. Julian said a little bit was fine, though she might not want any. He glanced at the screen. Where's the cat? Not with you? She's waiting right here. Leo took off the mitts and bent down to pick up the cat, who was sitting on the floor. He held her paw and waved it at the screen. Daisy, say hi to Daddy. The cat meowed. Julian laughed. If I'm Daddy, what are you? Leo hesitated. I'm her big brother. Trying to promote me, are you? That makes me sound old. But she's so little. As they were talking, the doorbell rang. Chris is here, I'll go get it. Okay, go ahead. After hanging up, Leo ran to the door. Buddy was especially enthusiastic today, squeezing past Chris and running in, barking and circling Leo, his round eyes curiously fixed on the cat in Leo's arms. The cat was surprisingly brave and wasn't scared, just clinging to Leo's shirt and warily observing the large, unfamiliar creature. Chris sighed. Buddy, be quiet. The dog let out a soft whine and backed up a few steps, still wagging his tail. Chris came in, greeted Leo, and then studied the cat for a moment. He said the same thing Julian had. She looks like you. Both uncle and nephew saying the same thing made Leo doubt himself. He held the cat up next to his face. Really? Yes, Chris said confidently. Round eyes, small face, small nose. Like you gave birth to her. My uncle definitely chose her to look like you. That's ridiculous. Leo ignored Chris, putting the cat down to play with Buddy and going to the kitchen to get the cookies. Chris had brought some unwelcome news. His university in England started in early September, and he would be leaving next month. So soon, Leo was stunned, a strange emptiness settling in his heart. Felt like just yesterday that Chris had been tutoring him. His English and math had improved dramatically in these past few months. He couldn't believe Chris was leaving already. Are you really not going to school? Chris asked tentatively. Leo was silent for a moment, his eyes downcast. Can't right now. Despite being married, in his heart, he still felt his relationship with Julian was one of being kept. If Julian didn't let him go, he couldn't go anywhere. Why? You can go to school even if you're married. There are long holidays to come back, and my uncle can visit you. Leo opened his mouth but didn't know how to explain. Sensing the heavy atmosphere, Buddy dropped his toy and trotted over, nudging his round head between Leo's legs and looking up with a charming smile. Leo's heart melted. He cupped Buddy's face in his hands and rubbed his head. I'll miss you too. Buddy really likes you, Chris said. But Leo trailed off. After a moment, Chris sighed, not pushing the issue. He offered an excuse for Leo. Being separated right after getting married is a bit hard. It's okay, you can go to school anytime. After I leave, make sure you don't slack off on your studies. You're not leaving for another month. Don't talk like that yet. Fine. We'll talk about it then. Worst case, I'll come back during every break to tutor you. Leo felt a sense of unease. He hesitated before asking, why are you so good to me, Mr. Adler had taught him that there was no such thing as unmotivated kindness in the world. If someone was good to you, they wanted something. This was especially true for men. Chris didn't answer. As time passed, Leo grew more anxious. It's okay, I was just asking. You don't have to answer. No, Chris interrupted. I just don't know how to say it. I've never thought about it. The rules of the adult world didn't seem to apply to the 17-year-old. Chris frowned, thinking for a long time. If you need a reason, there could be many. My uncle likes you, so I'm nice to you. You have a good personality, you're good-looking. A bit dumb, but not annoying. Sometimes you're cute in a silly way. But none of that is really important. Not everything needs a reason. I want to be nice to you, so I am. Just like you wanted a cat, so you got one. What do you want from her? Was that it? Leo didn't know whether to believe Mr. Adler or Chris. He glanced over and saw Daisy padding over from the other end of the sofa to lie down beside him, watching him obediently. A soft spot in his heart gave way. He picked up Daisy and placed her on his lap, gently scratching her chin. If only people were as simple as cats and dogs. Are you asking because of Mr. Adler and my uncle? Chris guessed. Leo's silence was his answer. Chris's expression became complicated. He sighed. You really need to make more friends. Those old guys fill your head with nonsense. I don't have any friends. You're my first friend. Leo was nervous. After saying it, he asked uncertainly, Are we friends? His eyes were innocent and anxious, reflecting the dappled sunlight like a lost fawn's. Chris could never look directly into those eyes. He averted his gaze. Of course. If you want, I'll always be your best friend. Leo lowered his lashes. Thank you, Chris. The news of Chris leaving put a damper on Leo's mood for the rest of the day. When Julian came home that evening, Leo followed him around like a silent shadow. As Julian stood in front of the closet changing, Leo wrapped his arms around his waist from behind, resting his head against his back without a word. Julian knew Leo well. This meant something was bothering him. He turned and pulled him into his arms, rubbing the back of his head. Did you not have a good time today? Leo shook his head. No. Then what is it? Did the cat and dog not get along? No, they got along great. Leo looked up. Chris is leaving for college. Julian paused, remembering that Chris was indeed starting soon. Time flew by so quickly. It felt like just yesterday that Chris was starting his senior year. Leo's eyes were downcast. I'll miss him and Buddy. His tone and expression were filled with a simple sadness, the kind one feels when a good friend is leaving. There was nothing more to it. Julian's heart softened. He gently kissed Leo's forehead. They'll come back to visit you during breaks. Leo hugged Julian tighter, burying his face in his chest. After a moment, he asked, Can I go to school in the future? Julian's words caught in his throat. He had been about to say of course, but something stopped him. Deep down, he didn't want Leo to leave him for school. His silence was Leo's answer. He slowly loosened his grip. It's okay. He couldn't finish the sentence. Leo. Julian held onto his waist, not letting him pull away. Leo looked up, his face a mixture of sadness, disappointment, and resignation. He looked into Julian's eyes. I know, Mr. Adler didn't let me go to school either. The word landed in Julian's ear like a shard of glass. Why didn't Mr. Adler let you go to school? Julian asked. He said he wanted me by his side, and that he could support me. I didn't need to go to school. Adler had treated Leo like a pet he kept. And now Julian was doing the same thing. Leo didn't say it, but Julian heard the unspoken accusation. And it wasn't wrong. His affection for Leo was intertwined with a selfish possessiveness. Julian didn't consider himself a noble person and had never seen anything wrong with it. But meeting Leo's gaze, he wavered. His own satisfaction or Leo's happiness. It was a difficult choice. Do you really want to go to school? Leo's lashes trembled. He nodded slightly. What if I don't let you go? Then I won't go. I'll be good and stay by your side. I won't go anywhere else. Julian said nothing. Neither he nor Adler could likely understand Leo's longing for school. It was the only place where he could be an ordinary person. At school, he wasn't an orphan, not someone's lover, not a beautiful toy for the rich and powerful. He was just a student like everyone else. Leo didn't say any of this to Julian. He knew everything in life had a price. He had gained a stable, affluent life at the cost of some of his freedom. It was a fair trade. Chris started visiting Julian's house more frequently. He didn't bring up his departure again, continuing to hang out with Leo and tutor him as usual. One morning, Chris came over while Leo was still asleep upstairs. Julian had kept him up until nearly dawn the night before, so Leo had only just fallen asleep a short while ago. Buddy and Daisy were chasing butterflies in the small garden, while Chris and Julian sat on a bench, soaking up the sun. Julian had no work scheduled for the day. He was sipping coffee, still in his pajamas from the night before, looking thoroughly content. "Your birthday is coming up, isn't it?" Julian suddenly asked, remembering something. Chris, who had been engrossed in watching the pets play, snapped back to the present. "Huh? Oh yeah, next month. What do you want for a gift?" "Nothing in particular." The uncle and nephew hadn't sat and talked like this in a long time. After that, they fell into a comfortable silence. Chris glanced up towards the second floor, then said, "I have a wish that isn't really a wish. Can you grant it? Tell me what it is first. Can you let Leo go to school?" The question hung in the air, instantly chilling it. Julian's expression hardened. He turned his head, his voice flat. "Why?" Chris pressed on. "He's worked so hard in his classes for so long. If he doesn't end up going to college, wasn't it all for nothing?" Julian stared into Chris's eyes for a long moment, then let out a cold, soft laugh. "You think I had you tutor him so he could go to college?" Chris was stunned, not understanding. "It was just to pass the time. Tutoring or shopping for bags, it makes no difference," Julian said dismissively. "I might indulge him with these useless lessons to make him happy, but that doesn't mean I agree to him actually leaving me for school." "How can you think that? He's a person. He has the right to an education." Compared to Chris's emotional outburst, Julian remained calm. "You're almost 18. Why are you still so naive? He has the right to an education, yes. But first and foremost, he is mine. So he does what I say." You're being unreasonable." As they argued, neither noticed that Leo had come downstairs. He stood in the doorway, dressed in pajamas and bunny-eared slippers, staring blankly at their backs. After a moment, he silently lowered his gaze and turned back into the house. He should have known. He didn't know why he had held onto such an unrealistic hope. Buddy, playing in the yard, was the first to spot Leo. He dropped his ball and ran over with a happy yelp. "Hey, where are you going?" Chris turned at the sound, and Julian turned with him. They both saw Leo and froze. Leo stopped and slowly turned around. He bent down to greet the approaching dog, a gentle smile on his face. "You're up early today." Buddy, oblivious to the tension, just grinned and wagged his tail. Leo crouched down, stroking his fluffy head. "Where's Daisy?" Buddy spun around and barked towards the garden. Leo followed his gaze and saw their little white cat trotting over. Leo picked her up, rubbing his cheek against hers. "Did Daddy feed you breakfast?" The cat meowed. "Good girl." Throughout the entire exchange, Leo didn't look at Julian or Chris. He didn't want to face them. Having just woken up, his emotions were raw, and he was afraid he couldn't muster a docile, obedient smile. So he chose to avoid them. He put the cat down, patting her head. "You two play first. I'm gonna wash my face." "Leo," Chris called out to him. Leo didn't turn back, heading straight for the stairs. Chris watched him go, then turned to look at Julian. Julian's brow was furrowed, his gaze following Leo until he disappeared around the corner of the staircase. He turned back and closed his eyes. He heard, "Aren't you going to comfort him?" Julian opened his eyes, his gaze dark. "You're a married couple now, not a sugar daddy and his boy toy. After what you said, he's bound to be upset. Don't you feel bad for him at all?" Julian gave a faint smile. You seem to know a lot. I just know that a man shouldn't make the person he likes sad, Chris said earnestly. After a tense silence, Julian stood up. I hope you can live up to those words yourself someday. After Julian left, Chris was alone on the bench with the cat and dog. A belated sense of gloom settled over him. He stared at his feet, a pang of regret in his heart. Why did he have to meddle? Why did he have to tell Julian to comfort Leo? It was their private affair. What did it have to do with him? But seeing Leo's dejected back, he had spoken without thinking. Julian could be a bastard. He could break anyone's heart, but not Leo's. Leo deserved to be loved properly, without being hurt. In truth, Julian was not as calm and composed as Chris thought. His steps were heavy, his mind in turmoil. He went upstairs and found Leo standing in front of the bathroom sink, lost in thought. A few drops of water clung to his fringe, and his eyes were red, as if he had been crying. Julian remembered Chris's words. Had he made Leo sad? What he had said earlier wasn't entirely what he meant. But Chris's wish for his important 18th birthday had been about Leo, and specifically about Leo leaving him for school. It had stung Julian, so he had deliberately spoken those harsh words, never expecting Leo to overhear. He knew he should explain and apologize, but a man's pride made it difficult for him to back down. He stood in the bathroom doorway for a moment before saying, "Leo." Leo's body stiffened. He slowly turned his head. "Julian," the formal, distant address again. Julian frowned slightly, remembering that Leo had never called Adler Mr. Adler in such a way. To the world, he was Mr. Blackwood. To Adler, he was simply Mr. Adler. The difference in intimacy was clear. Neither of them spoke. After a moment, Leo forced a docile, pleasing smile, the kind he always wore. "Why did you come up? Where's Chris?" "Downstairs." Leo looked down, the line of his slender neck disappearing into his pajamas. A faint love bite was partially visible at his collarbone, a brand Julian had left on him the night before. He belonged entirely to Julian. The thought eased the tension in Julian's brow. He walked over to Leo and gently touched his red-rimmed eyes. "Have you been crying?" Leo hesitated, then shook his head. "No." Julian ignored his denial. "Why were you crying? Because I won't let you go to school?" "No, it wasn't just that." Leo didn't absolutely have to go to school. It was Julian's words that had hurt him. He realized that marriage didn't change anything. In Julian's eyes, he was still just a pet. Julian bent down, cupping Leo's face in his hands, his gaze heavy. "When Adler didn't let you go to school, did you resent him?" Leo's lashes fluttered. He should have denied it, but he didn't. Julian continued, "He was so cruel, not letting you go to school, not letting you have friends. Why do you still like him?" Leo stared at Julian, his eyes welling up with tears. His lashes were wet, and after a moment, his nose stung. "Mr. Adler wasn't cruel." Julian's gaze darkened. "Do you know it's a dangerous thing to tell your husband another man is good?" His speech was slow, his tone calm, but it filled Leo with a sense of dread. He flinched instinctively. "Adler could have taken you in when you were a child, given you a happy, carefree life. But he waited until you had suffered enough before extending a hand, bestowing his charity on you. Then he locked you in a cage. What kind of good person does that?" Leo shook his head unconsciously. "No, it wasn't like that. Am I wrong?" Julian's thumb gently wiped away the moisture from the corner of Leo's eye. He was so calculating. How could you ever win against him? Tears streamed down Leo's face. A voice inside him told him Julian was right, but he refused to admit it. Selfish or calculating, Adler had never wronged him, never hurt him. In fact, he had given him so much. He shouldn't resent him. Julian's voice was low and hoarse. Why are you crying? Because I spoke ill of him? Are you sad? Do you hate me right now? I don't. Leo tried to hold back his tears, but he couldn't stop the soft sobs. Julian's gaze was like an inescapable net, pressing down on him, making his chest feel tight. He looked up, a wave of hurt and sadness overwhelming him. Why are you being so mean today? Did I do something to make you angry? Can you please not talk to me like that? I'm scared, crying. He threw himself into Julian's arms, standing on his tiptoes to hug his neck. I'm sorry. I won't go to school. Just don't be mean to me. Warm tears fell from Leo's cheeks onto Julian's collar. Julian froze. He suddenly remembered he had come up here to comfort Leo. How had it come to this, making him cry again? It seemed that whenever Adler's name came up, Julian couldn't control his jealousy, even stooping to slander in an attempt to destroy Adler's perfect image in Leo's mind. In the end, it was always Leo who got hurt. In the beginning, Julian had liked seeing Leo's tears. But now, as Leo cried in his arms, he just felt a heavy weight in his chest, a dull ache in his heart. Julian slowly raised his hand, his large palm covering the back of Leo's head, stroking it gently. Don't cry. Even his attempts at comfort were clumsy and awkward. He only knew how to make Leo cry, not how to make him laugh. No wonder Leo preferred Adler. The person in his arms was slender and fragile, like a handful of delicate snow when he cried. Julian's heart inevitably softened. He whispered, I wasn't being mean to you. It's my fault. It won't happen again. Leo sniffled, his tears slowly subsiding. He buried his face in Julian's chest and shook his head. I just don't want you to leave me, so I said those things on purpose. It wasn't easy for Julian to admit fault. The words came out slowly. I get lonely too. Leo, we just got married. If you leave, what will I do? Julian said he was lonely. Leo was stunned into silence. Once the first admission was made, the rest seemed to come easier. A faint, bitter smile touched Julian's lips. As if making a great resolve, he hugged Leo tighter. I promise you, next year. How about next year? Leo was stunned, repeating uncertainly, next year. Let's at least have some time, just the two of us. We haven't even had a honeymoon, we haven't raised the kitten yet. Can you bear to leave me? To leave the cat? The cat? Leo's gaze went over Julian's shoulder, and he saw Daisy sitting obediently outside the bathroom door. When had she followed them up? Did she know her daddy had made her brother sad? Julian, Leo began softly. Julian's heart felt sour, like a squeezed lemon. Apologizing and admitting fault wasn't as hard as he'd imagined. Compromise came much faster than expected. He had never intended to keep Leo locked away forever. In fact, even before the wedding, he had considered having Leo study business so he could help him run the company later. But that thought had quickly faded. In the end, he felt Leo should do what he wanted. He had never said any of this to Leo. Don't cry anymore. Will you forgive me? Leo nodded, wiping away his tears. I don't hate you. I could never hate you. Julian's breath hitched. He realized Leo was answering his earlier question. And I won't leave you. Just please don't be mean to me. I'm scared. Leo's voice broke with a sob again. No matter what Mr. Adler did, he helped me a lot. He's gone now. I can't speak ill of him. Leo's words reminded Julian that Adler was dead. Whatever the truth was, it was in the past. Telling Leo would only hurt him, so it was better left unsaid. He shouldn't let his jealousy harm Leo. Leo was innocent. I'm sorry. It was the first time Julian had said those 3 words to Leo. Let's not talk about this anymore. Never again. He held Leo close, kissing his forehead comfortingly. It was my fault. Leo shook his head. It's okay. They went downstairs together. Chris was playing fetch with Buddy on the lawn. Leo had washed his face, but his eyes were still red, clear evidence that he had been crying. Seeing this, Chris shot his uncle a disdainful look, as if mocking him for being so old and not knowing how to comfort his husband. Julian ignored him, stroked the back of Leo's head, and told him to go eat breakfast before playing. Leo obediently agreed, greeted Chris, and went to the dining room. After Leo left, Chris deliberately poked the bear. How did you manage to make him cry again? Julian frowned but didn't answer. Chris didn't seem to care, continuing to throw the frisbee for Buddy. He sighed. If I were you, I'd be pampering him every day. He's young and beautiful. He can find someone else. But you're getting on in years. Finding another husband won't be so easy. How old am I? Julian laughed, exasperated. Are you ganging up with him against me? Chris shrugged. Not me. Julian took a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, put one in his mouth, but didn't light it. Chris glanced at him. No lighter? No, I'm just agitated. Chewing on it helps. Julian was calm, but Chris reacted as if he'd heard something incredible. His eyes widened. You quit smoking? Julian grunted in affirmation. As long as Chris could remember, Julian had been a smoker. Though he didn't smoke much, he had never quit. Chris had assumed he never would. Why? He asked. It's too much trouble. After smoking, you have to brush your teeth, wash your hands, change your clothes. It's easier not to smoke. A thought seemed to occur to him, and he glanced towards the dining room. He's got the nose of a bloodhound. Can't stand the smell of smoke, or perfume, or anyone else's cologne. I'm at my wit's end with him. Chris rolled his eyes. Go tell him that to his face. Julian smiled faintly. Reverse psychology won't work on me. They chatted idly until a dark cloud rolled in. A summer storm was brewing. Soon, there was a flash of lightning and a roll of thunder. Buddy, frisbee in mouth, ran back in panic and hid behind Chris. Chris sighed. Coward. It's starting to rain. Let's go inside. The rain came down hard, dark clouds obscuring the sun. Large drops hammered against the window panes. After breakfast, Leo had planned to take Buddy for a walk, but now he was stuck inside, watching the rain, his head tilted up at the sky. Whenever he was still, he looked like a figure in a painting. The large window made his frame seem especially delicate. He sat on a low cushion, his head resting against the glass, his long, thick lashes casting a faint shadow on his face. The cat sat beside him, also looking up at the sky. Julian found himself walking more quietly. He placed a glass of warm water beside Leo and a thin blanket over his legs. It's cold by the window. Leo slowly came back to himself, blinking. Thank you, Julian. The cat meowed at Julian, then pawed at Leo's glass. You want some too? Julian understood. All right, wait a minute. As Julian went to get water for the cat, Chris came and sat beside Leo. I never thought my uncle would turn into this. Leo was confused. Into what? He used to hate pets. He had no patience for cats or dogs. Chris glanced at Leo. But then again, he never had much patience for people either. So I guess it makes sense. Leo's eyes dropped.